cross and turn the gospel into something that it's not, so that people will like us and like it. In fact, if everybody likes it and you're never tempted to be ashamed, you never face this temptation because you know how people are going to react to it, you're probably not preaching the gospel, right? We must stick to the old gospel, the true gospel. For this gospel is alone the power of God to salvation, to everyone who believes. But now on a more personal level, my friend, let me ask you, are you ashamed of Christ? Have you let go of your own self-governed sinful life and entrusted your life and your soul to Jesus Christ? And have you confessed Him before men as your Lord and Savior, taking up the cross to follow Him, to identify with Him and with His people as one of His disciples? Have you done that? Or are you embarrassed to do it? Perhaps. Ashamed of Christ and His Word. Worried about what others might say about you or think about you. Here's some indications that you're ashamed of Christ. Some ways it's indicated. For example, my friend, listen to me. You're ashamed of Christ if you're convicted and anxious about your soul. Perhaps needing to talk to someone about it, but you refuse because you're ashamed and embarrassed. Instead, you try to hide it because you're afraid of what your friends might think or what others might think about you. So you just try not to think about it. You try to drive serious thoughts from your mind and pretend that you don't care about these things, that everything is okay. Why do you do that? It's because you're ashamed of Christ and the gospel. You're ashamed of Christ if you're too proud to get down on your knees and to cry to Him to have mercy upon your soul and to seek Him while He may be found. You're ashamed of Christ if you will not come to Him, repudiating your own sinful, self-governed life and turning from it and casting yourself upon Him for mercy and trusting Him to save you. And you're ashamed of Christ if you refuse to confess Him before men and to be baptized and to join yourself to His people. Why will you not do that? You say, I'm embarrassed. What will people say? What you're telling me is you're more worried about what people may think than you are about what God thinks about you. But I plead with you, don't be ashamed of Christ. Ask yourself, should I be ashamed of the one who left his home in glory and who came to this earth to die on the cross for a sinner like me and who freely extends his love to me in the gospel and promises to save me and to forgive all of my sins no matter what or how many they are and to never leave me nor forsake me, but to bring me safely all the way to heaven? How can I be ashamed of such a Savior? He was shamed, hanging naked on a cross while they mocked Him. And He did that you might be saved. God forbid that you should be ashamed of Him. But now in closing, having considered this danger and temptation of being ashamed of Christ and His words, notice just briefly what Jesus tells us about the consequences of being ashamed of Him. Verse 26. For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him the Son of Man will be ashamed when He comes. It'll be a whole lot different kind of coming the second time, right? He's not going to come born into a stable with His glory veiled. When He comes in His own glory and in His Father's and of the holy angels. You have sinners who are ashamed of Christ, and the consequences are that He will be ashamed of them. He will be ashamed of them, or in other words, He will shame them. On that day when He comes to judge